If you need yet another piece of evidence that Republicans are the party that protects predators, I've got one for you from, not surprisingly, Utah. Okay, I need a beer to get through this. Yes, I'm drinking it out of a scotch glass. Don't judge me. The headline from Newsweek sums it up well. Republican senator changes child SA law after relative accused of SAing a minor. It's worse than you think. So an 18-year-old relative of the president of the Utah Senate, who is a Republican, avoided jail time after SAing a 13-year-old girl. So the timeline is a little confusing, so hang with me. I'm going to be referencing a piece from the Salt Lake Tribune. Okay, so here's what we know. An 18-year-old is charged for SAing a 13-year-old girl. Under Utah law at the time, those charges could constitute first-degree rape. I'm sorry to have to continue to use euphemisms, but I've had multiple videos demonetized by YouTube for speaking factually and frankly about the things that Republican men do to women and girls. They can do it and get away with it, but we can't talk about it. So he was facing potentially a long prison sentence and having to register as a sex offender. And after that man was charged and negotiations were breaking down about a plea deal, suddenly the Senate President, J. Stewart Adams, who is a relative of that 18-year-old, suggested changes to a Utah law that was on the books. So charges filed. Suddenly, Senate President says, hey, y'all, let's change this law. So he had the law changed from it being potentially first-degree rape and having to register as a sex offender and serve a lot of years in prison. He changed the law to downgrade it so that 18-year-olds who SA 13-year-old girls will not be charged with first degree. They will instead be charged with a third-degree felony, unlawful sexual activity, where they don't necessarily have to face any prison time and they don't have to register as sex offenders. Just going to remind y'all that an 18-year-old is an adult and a 13-year-old is a 7th grader. So Republicans in the Utah Senate, I'm not going to go on my rant about how this is on brand for Republican Mormons, but they suddenly made it less of a crime for an 18-year-old to assault a middle schooler. So my understanding from the Salt Lake Tribune is 18-year-old gets charged with assaulting a 13-year-old girl. His powerful relative who runs the Utah Senate, who is a Republican, changes the law. Unfortunately, the new law is not retroactive. However, y'all, the judge, the prosecutor, and the defense attorney, who all helped draft the bill language that was eventually adopted by the legislature, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and the judge all helped impact the law to make it a less serious offense for an 18-year-old to assault a 13-year-old girl. They were then still allowed to handle this young man's case. They all acknowledged that their hand in helping draft the new bill language was pivotal to resolving the charges. They then were able to come to a plea agreement, and that 18-year-old faced no more prison time. He spent 1 week in jail. He faced no prison time and did not have to register as a sex offender for assaulting a 13-year-old girl, a 7th grader. It's interesting to note here that the law was specifically changed to make it so that 18-year-olds who assault 13-year-olds don't face as harsh a punishment. It's like the suggestion for changes to the law that the Republican Senate president made directly benefited his relative who was charged in this very specific scenario where he loosened the law, supported loosening the law so that his relative would not face a harsh prison sentence or having to register as a sex offender. In a statement to the Salt Lake Tribune, Adams, again a Republican, again a relative of this man, said that the case stemmed from, quote, a serious mistake, and that he was, quote, surprised by the severity of the charges that were initially filed. Y'all, the charges were 2 counts of raping a child and 2 counts of, it starts with an S and I can't say it, a child. You don't accidentally violate a 13-year-old child 4 times in 2 different ways by mistake. It actually reminds me of that guy in the comments of my video about Lolo. People keep saying he's actually Lolo posting from an anonymous account because he's in the comments of everybody's videos about Lolo, who harassed multiple women and sent inappropriate messages and had inappropriate contact with a number of women. That guy in all our comments is saying it was a mistake. You should forgive him. It was a mistake. A mistake is when you put on one navy blue sock and one black sock. A mistake is when you forget to turn off the coffee pot when you leave the house in the morning. A mistake is when you turn on the air conditioner and you forget to close the window in the front room. A mistake is not essaying a 13-year-old child 4 times in 2 different ways. That 18-year-old was facing 25 years to life in prison and having to register as a sex offender. But his relative not only changed the law, but the judge and the other folks involved in the case helped rewrite the law so that that guy faced 1 week behind bars, and now nobody knows who he is or what he did. I find it weird that nobody is naming him in all of this. He was an adult who did this to a 7th grader. She has to live with that for the rest of her life. She has that trauma for the rest of her life, and he faces no consequences. The mother of the junior high school victim said in an interview with the Salt Lake Tribune that she was shocked to learn about the change to the law. It was out of nowhere, and I felt like I was punched in the gut. She believes her child was an afterthought in both legislative debate and the handling of the criminal case. She said, I feel like the 18-year-old perpetrator got special treatment, and nobody is going to say anything about it. That's because Republicans are the party that protects predators, y'all. Republicans are the predators. They protect the predators. They create this system that helps predators get away with victimizing children and women. They are not the party of family values. They are not the upstanding, righteous party that cares about saving the children. Look, I'm so mad I finished my beer. They are the party that protects child predators. They are the party that preys on women and kids. I know I've talked about it in the past, and I am not the only one. Mormons and evangelicals, the Republican Party, they are inherently repressive. They hypersexualize children, and they repress people's normal, healthy sexuality. And when you have a dynamic like that, you create young men, adult men, who prey on children. And then in order to cover up for all of that, y'all created a situation that created predators, and then you continue to protect them. I think of the Duggar family and Josh Duggar. In this instance, this Mormon family and this 18-year-old that assaulted a 13-year-old child 4 times. And he faces no consequences. Nothing. His name, he won't even be named. The Salt Lake Tribune says, we don't normally cover stories of this nature, so we're not going to name him, even though he's an adult. What a fucking excuse. How are people going to know to protect their daughters from this man? No rehabilitation for him whatsoever. It's like Josh Duggar being sent off to dig holes after he assaulted his sisters. No rehabilitation, no treatment. These young men were taught to hypersexualize girls. They were taught to repress their own urges. They were never taught any concept of healthy sexuality. It's the repressive religions. It's the Republicans and their desire to control everybody else. Their preoccupation with the sexuality of adolescents, their preoccupation with temptation, their inability to accept normal, healthy sexuality and to teach children to have like any kind of sex positive view of their relationship, the denial of teaching children about consent, the way that they don't see girls and women as fully human, and then the ways that they protect men who violate women and children from facing any consequences and enable and embolden them to continue assaulting others. This is a huge and systemic problem, and we should not stop talking about it, and we should continue to use the Epstein files to highlight how the Republicans are a party full of predators, a party that rigs the system to protect predators, puts women and girls at risk.